Hi, my name is Peter Riddle, President and co-founder of the Empowered Learning Transformational Centers. Today we're going to speak about sensory integration, give you an in-depth look of how we assess for it and how we treat and remediate the underdeveloped abilities. Now when we do a screening, a sensory motor visual processing screening, we're measuring 13 perceptual abilities. Each of these abilities are fundamental to the processing of information as you take it in from the environment. We measure these 13 perceptual abilities with the parent observing. If the child has any issue during the screening, you physically see it and begin to understand why a child may struggle so much. Now, every time a person comes in for a screening, they'll go home with a sheet that will rate them on a scale of 1 to 5. 5 being a fully developed ability, or 1 being severely developed. In the final column is a list of symptoms that if you're underdeveloped in these abilities, you should see. Now the 13 perceptual abilities we measure are midline, balance, spatial awareness, fine and gross motor skills, and a variety of different visual processing abilities. Saccadic eye movement, ocular pursuit, board to seat work, convergence, and teaming and aiming of the eyes. Every parent should bring their child to a developmental optometrist once in their lifetime. A developmental optometrist is somebody who measures their visual processing. Every parent should bring their child to an ophthalmologist or optometrist to check their eyesight. And if you see or a teacher recommends, a parent should bring their child to an occupational therapist or a physical therapist if there are sensory or muscle tone or physical issues with the child. What we do at Empowered Learning is put it all together. We measure these 13 perceptual abilities. Each one has an enormous impact on the child's learning ability. The first thing we'll test for is balance. How well a child's balance is indicates how well the two hemispheres are integrated. When a child has good balance, both compensated and natural balance, they usually are in control of their bodies and are not having issues physically by being out of control, moving too much, getting too close to other people, unless they have severe spatial issues. So that balance has everything to do with how well the two hemispheres are integrated. An underdeveloped sense of balance will not only affect the child in obvious ways, problems sitting still, performing well in physical education and sports, but it compromises the whole sensory system. These are the kids that need a lot of movement when they're working. For a parent working with the child with severe spatial and balance issues, to tell that child to sit still or sit up straight will actually increase the stress that child is under. For that child to focus on detail and also having to control their body will raise the cortisol levels. The moment that happens, all the blood flow in the frontal lobes rushes back to the brain stem, fight or flight. We actually have heightened smell, taste, touch, sight, hearing, which makes it even more difficult for that child to focus on detail. When you're working with that child, allowing that child to spin, to turn, to get up if need be, it may take a little bit longer to do the homework, but if it's done without stress, the child will learn better, and you'll eventually find it's easier to get the homework done, and it'll actually get done quicker by allowing that movement. The next thing we'll test for is midline. Now again, that's how well the two hemispheres are integrated, but this has to do with usage. When someone has a midline problem, there are usually other underlying issues that causes stress that forces them into one hemisphere. Whole brain function is what you need for reading comprehension and understanding sequence and procedures. When you have problems with midline, if you're an A student, you're that A student has to read things 2 or 3 times. If you're that B or C student, it's maybe because you're not going back that second or third time to read it. And that's the difference between the A and the B. So when you read, your analytical part of the brain decodes the words and gives the words meaning. The creative part puts the words together so you understand the subtext. When you're stressed, when you have midline issues, you may be only using your analytical part of your brain. So as a result, the information gets to the brain. You may read a sentence, understand every word in the sentence, but you don't understand what the sentence means, what the subtext is. That second read, stress is less, information's familiar. Now you use your creative part and you put the words together to understand the subtext. following sequence and procedures like directions, word problems, and math. These are common careless mistakes that are made because of midline issues. Then we'll check spatial awareness. Spatial awareness is how you navigate your environment. There are issues here. These are the kids that when they walk down the halls, their hands are on the walls or on the lockers. The line stops and they don't. They have no idea where they are in space and time, and as a result, they may invade other people's space, touch more often than they should, and act inappropriate. This is because underlying issues are causing them not to navigate their environment correctly, not to be able to see everything in the environment and be able to measure it. And then we'll measure fine and gross motor skills. Many times, children with writing issues or gross or fine motor skill issues are not a result of the skill itself, but weak muscle tone, like in the shoulder, where there's almost a disconnect, so they'll hold their pencil differently. And no matter how often an OT or even a PT may work with the child to correct this, unless some of the other underlying issues are dealt with, there's really very little improvement in that handwriting or gross and fine motor skills. So those are the areas of sensory motor that we correct. Then we'll check for visual processing issues. Now, a lot of times we do run into kids that have eyesight issues, where they're not seeing at near point correctly. They may have not gone to an ophthalmologist or an optometrist. So as a result, they don't know they need glasses. So words are blurry on them, and they can't see at near point. If they've gone to the pediatrician, they normally check for 20/20, which is far point. So if we find the child that needs to be checked by an ophthalmologist, we'll stop the screening and reconvene after the parent sees an ophthalmologist or an optometrist. Now, what we'll check for is something called saccadic eye movement. That's the movement of eyes from point to point. We're measuring three abilities: the ability itself, the accuracy, and the head and body movement. If there are issues here, what you'll see is undershoots or overshoots with the eyes. And what's common? Students with this issue often skip lines or words when they read. They may misread words. Look at the and say them or there. Is could be if. And it's a quick misread because the eyes are skipping or missing that word. After that, we'll check ocular pursuit, how well an object is tracked in space and time. If there are issues here, what you'll see is refixations, jumps and shakes in the eyes. Now, there are times we see severe refixations and we have to refer out to a developmental optometrist. That is a doctor who does vision training. Now, if there are issues here, students may invert letters and words, and they are easily distracted by anything in their field of vision. So a student could be sitting there paying attention, and across the room a student runs their hand through their hair, and that student will look over quickly to see what that movement was. They're easily distracted by movement or sounds. Then we'll check for convergence. How well did two eyes converge? This is what you may call a lazy eye if you don't have it developed. When I was a child, I suffered from this. It was called a wall eye. One of my eyes would go out. At 22, I did vision training and corrected that. Made an enormous difference in my reading ability. Back in school, if I read 20 pages, I'd have to take a break. If I had 40, 50, 60 pages to read in a night, it may take 2 or 3 sittings to finish all that reading. Now, I can read 300 pages at a time. My focus and attention has increased dramatically by correcting the convergence issues I had some 30-some odd years ago. We also check for board-to-point work, how quickly a child's eyes look up and down. There's a delay. Copying off a blackboard or even from book to book can be enormously exhausting and time-consuming for a child, not to mention that if it's required to do in the classroom, the child's attention afterward would be pretty well off because of the fatigue that would be resulting from the looking up and down. Final thing we test for is teaming and aiming. When you look at an object, are both your eyes on that object? If there is an issue here, your eyes are not looking at the same place, your eyes will fatigue easily. If you also have convergence issues, then you'll more than likely have reading and severe attention issues. Now, all these issues can be addressed together. What we do that's so different in applying the treatment for this is both in method and how we do it. We try to overwhelm the brain. We don't have a static room where things are quiet and organized. We create a lot of chaos, a lot of distractions. And then we combine the OT and vision training together. It's kind of like PT and OT and vision training squared. You're doing 3, 4, sometimes 5 things at the same time with all these distractions around you. We condition your brain to focus with distractions because that is real world. There are over 35 different exercises you will do. Every exercise in this room will develop one of the 14 muscles around the eyes, as well as integrate the 2 hemispheres of the brain for proper balance, spatial awareness, and fine and gross motor skills. A byproduct of students going through this program is athletically they go through the ceiling for obvious reasons, better focus, attention. So each of these exercises is done with a trampoline, balance boards, walking boards. There are different manipulatives that would be used in order to achieve this. Each exercise is designed on a hierarchy of developing the muscles. So at the end, we will do a rescreening, and everything that was a 1, 2, or a 3 will be a 4 or 5 on our rescreening. So if you physically saw your child couldn't perform some of these tasks, you would see these tasks fully developed in order for you to know the program has worked and that they're done with the program. I want to thank you for listening. Have a great